Before the cascade of betrayal and heartache began, she was known as the steadfast heartbeat of her home, a loving wife and nurturing mother who spent her days tending to the needs of her family while quietly wrestling with an unfulfilled yearning for something more. In the gentle moments between caring for her children and supporting her husband, a soft yet insistent whisper of liberation began to stir within her soul. The routine of domestic life, though filled with love, slowly morphed into a cage of expectation and unspoken sacrifice, leaving her yearning for a taste of freedom that lay just beyond the horizon of her carefully constructed world. As the days wore on, that inner desire grew into an irresistible force, beckoning her toward the unknown and promising a world where passion and self-discovery might finally redefine her existence. Compelled by an insatiable hunger for self-discovery, she wandered into the realm of the cult, a place that offered an intoxicating alternative to the life she had carefully built. The charismatic leader, with his commanding presence and hypnotic words, spoke of a freedom that could only be attained by shedding the shackles of societal expectations. For the first time in years, she felt seen, truly seen. And in his eyes, she discovered a reflection of herself she had long buried beneath the weight of her role as a dutiful wife and mother. The teachings promised liberation from the very constraints that had once shaped her: devotion to family, loyalty to her husband, and submission to the norms of the world she inhabited. The allure of this untouched, uncharted world felt like a breath of fresh air, filled with the possibility of a life beyond the carefully scripted boundaries she'd conformed to. The first sessions were innocent enough, discussions that appeared thought-provoking, invitations to explore parts of herself she'd long ignored. But over time, the cult's influence intensified, weaving its web deeper into her consciousness. The leader's persuasive charm clouded her judgment, coaxing her to let go of any lingering guilt. After all, these teachings were meant to empower her, to bring her closer to her true self, even if that meant stepping outside the boundaries of everything she once held dear. As she began attending discreet gatherings, the allure of the cult manifested as both a sanctuary and a revolution from her once predictable life. Each meeting unfolded like a clandestine ceremony where whispered philosophies and the promise of unbridled self-expression lured her deeper into an unfamiliar realm. Here, the charismatic leader emerged, a magnetic figure whose every word challenged the rigid boundaries of her past. His teachings spoke of freedom from societal expectations and the liberation of the inner self, ideas that resonated with the quiet rebellion burning within her. Amid the glow of flickering candlelight and the hum of collective yearning, she experienced a stirring conflict between the warmth of her familiar life and the tantalizing call of a world unbound by convention. The cult's ethos, wrapped in both mystery and promise, began to erode the constraints of her former identity, inviting her to abandon the safe confines of domesticity for the intoxicating prospect of rediscovered passion and autonomy. The affair blossomed in the shadows of secrecy, thriving on stolen moments and hidden desires. At first, it was just fleeting glances, a shared intensity in private conversations that seemed innocent enough. But soon, the bond with the cult leader became undeniable, the emotional connection deepening into something far more dangerous. In the leader's presence, she felt both seen and desired in ways her familiar world had never allowed. Her doubts, her frustrations, and her unarticulated wants were finally acknowledged. The charismatic leader was no longer just a figure embodying freedom. He became the embodiment of everything she had longed for in her marriage, but never confessed. Their stolen nights together were filled with passion, lust, and the thrill of rebellion, each one reinforcing the lies she told herself about the necessity of this secret life. Outside the sanctuary of the cult, she played her part in society, an attentive wife and mother, always masked by a practiced facade of normalcy. But within the safe, hidden retreat of the cult meetings, the affair became an all-consuming force, anchoring her in a dichotomous existence. Each day, she was caught between the love and responsibility she felt for her family and the desire to jump into the intoxicating embrace of the life she had been promised, a life of freedom and unrestrained possibility. But as the affair continued, the guilt gnawed at her, and yet the pull of the cult, and the leader's influence seemed stronger than any familial bond or moral hesitation. It was a battle between her loyalty to her family and the allure of an identity reborn in absolute freedom. Her heart torn between two worlds she couldn't keep apart for long. In the hushed corridors of secret meetings, the allure of the cult took on an even more dangerous glow when she found herself drawn irresistibly to its enigmatic leader. Their connection began with charged glances and whispered confidences shared in the sanctity of dimly lit gatherings, where every moment felt both liberating and forbidden. As their interactions deepened, a clandestine romance unfolded, each encounter laced with an intoxicating mix of desire and risk. The thrill of their secret affair offered an escape from her old life, a heady promise of freedom and passion that starkly contrasted with the confines of her once stable marriage. Yet, amid the exhilaration, every stolen kiss and hushed promise also served as a reminder of the betrayal looming over her former identity, painting her new world with both irresistible allure and the heavy cost of crossing forbidden lines. It was in the quiet, otherwise ordinary moments that the truth finally emerged. Adam, her unsuspecting husband, stumbled upon the betrayal she had only just begun to truly understand herself. The discovery was not dramatic, not the result of a grand confrontation or public unveiling, but rather a slow, inevitable unraveling. Perhaps it was a misplaced text message, a forgotten receipt, or the shift in her demeanor he couldn't shake. Something subtle yet undeniable that pierced through the facade of normalcy she had so desperately tried to maintain. The initial shock was followed by a bridge of silence pregnant with questions, where the weight of her dual existence pressed uncomfortably against their shared history. When the confrontation finally came, the raw pain in Adam's eyes was more than she had anticipated. His world, the sense of security he had built with her, shattered into 1,000 fragments of disbelief. The silence that followed his first confrontation was deafening. It wasn't her begging speech or apologies that landed hardest. It was the simple reality that the betrayal had already taken root, and no matter how many times she spoke the words, "I'm sorry," they somehow felt hollow, impotent against the magnitude of the loss. The moment they stood face to face in that emotional abyss was where her choices became undeniably visible to both of them. One life abandoned, another irrevocably altered. The revelation unfolded on a day that began like any other, yet quickly spiraled into a nightmare that shattered the fragile illusion of their life together. Adam, piecing together subtle hints that had long been hidden in whispered phone calls and furtive glances, finally encountered irrefutable evidence of betrayal. One evening, as he entered the quiet confines of their home, his heart sank into an abyss of disbelief when he stumbled upon a scene that defied all the trust he had once placed in her. In that devastating moment, the facade of their shared past crumbled, the warm familiarity of their living room transformed into a stage for heartbreak. The sight of his wife, entangled in a forbidden embrace with the charismatic cult leader, sent shockwaves of pain and betrayal through him, leaving him paralyzed by a mix of sorrow, fury, and profound disillusionment. Every moment of hidden intimacy now echoed like a cruel reminder of promises broken, forcing him to confront the reality that the love and commitment they had once nurtured were irrevocably tainted. Her knees buckled as she fell to the floor, clutching at air, as if trying to hold on to something, anything, to stop the avalanche of regret crashing down upon her. Tears blurred her vision as she looked up at Adam, her voice breaking under the weight of guilt she could no longer escape. This was the moment she had dreaded, the one where the irreversible damage was laid bare between them, with no veil of denial left to hide behind. In the rawness of the confrontation, she begged, pleaded for his forgiveness, each word hanging in the space between them like a fragile thread that could snap at the slightest pull. Vowing to turn back, she promised to change and spun tales of remorse, of the chaotic and misguided freedom she had chased, now realizing she had lost so much in the process. But beneath the desperation, there was a palpable truth. She had broken him. The silent pause that followed revealed the quiet devastation her actions had caused, a chasm that would be nearly impossible to bridge. Adam stood motionless, unable to reconcile the woman he once loved with the one standing before him, desperately apologizing, knowing that time may not heal this wound. In that moment, The hesitant flicker of hope she clung to began to fade, replaced by the grim reality that some things, like trust, once shattered, were never truly whole again. In the wake of devastation, as the raw shock of betrayal gave way to an unbearable silence, she fell to her knees, her voice trembling with an earnest plea that echoed through the shattered remnants of their once shared life. With tear-stained cheeks and a heart heavy with remorse, she reached out to Adam, her words a fragile bridge over the abyss of his pain. Each whispered apology and desperate promise was imbued with the hope of redemption, a fervent cry for forgiveness that sought to mend the deep fissures of trust. In that charged, somber moment, the air pulsed with the weight of her vulnerability and the possibility of salvaging something pure from the ruins of her mistakes. Her plea was a raw testament to the complexities of love, a fragile, uncertain hope that perhaps the shattered pieces of their bond might one day be reassembled into a semblance of what once was.